The corporate psychopath works on a 3P pattern. So they're very deliberate about the destruction or the hurt and the harms.
Yeah, and it's almost like being stuck in this drama triangle, right? Coming up.
I call it the seduction. They really win those guys over. And unbeknownst to those top guys, this dysfunction is happening in the system.
Because I wonder sometimes, is it subconscious behavior or is it conscious behavior? Light as a feather, deep as the ocean, right?
Emotions are not good at work. Being emotional is not the same as having emotions at work.
Like if you speak your truth, people get offended by it. But if you mask, you harm yourself actually more than you're harming those around you.
We all have got the capability to bully. Remember, we're wired to protect our reality.
Yeah.
We're wired to be right. We're wired to be in control. And anything that falls out of our control, we just cut it out. We just disregard it.
Yeah.
Because it makes it easy. Because we want to avoid pain. We want to be in a state of pleasure. And that pleasure is being in control. We would do anything to be in control.
Yeah.
So it is a baseline reaction to anything unfamiliar or uncomfortable. And when you suffer from a little bit of anxiety or a bit of insecurity, that is even a harder expression.
Zondre guides us through all the essential tools and questions we need to ask ourselves as leaders and really understand how we can participate and play our role to bring about change, shift culture, and use the currency of relationship to make the world a better place. If you want to join the Conscious Leaders movement, go to the following link, linktree/Carmen Murray. There you will find all the resources, activities, as well as the link to our podcast, the link to our YouTube channel, and then also all of the current activities that we are hosting, as well as access to our digital magazine. Thank you. Hey, Conscious Leaders, I am super excited to bring to you a gift. Dr. Zondré Keevy. Now, I have to give you a little bit of context. So, I did my postgraduate diploma a few years ago at Henley Business School, and this was the person that I had to report into, and I had to do very deeply personal assignments about my life and going really deep into personal matters to find out who I am and dealing with my shadows so that I can become a better leader. And this woman has changed my life. Now, I've been begging her for over 2 years to be on the podcast so that we can actually talk about leadership, because I've learned so much and I feel like it can bring you so much value, and it's going to blow your mind away to hear all of the knowledge that comes from this woman. Dr. Zondré Keevy. She is a leadership development professional. She's an academic. She's a teacher, an educator. She's a coach. She is an enlightened being, and we are just so thrilled to bring her to you so that you can also just gain all the insights that can really help set the trajectory of your leadership abilities. So I want to tell you a quick story. I came across this social media post and I found it was very fascinating. They took houseplants and they did some testing with EEG on these particular houseplants to see how connected they are to their homeowners. And what they found is that once people come home, once they're 2 kilometers away from home, the plants actually starts getting happy and excited because it picks up the frequency of their owners. To me, that's just fascinating in itself. But what really got me going on that one is, where does this take us on Mondays? Because Mondays, we all get those jitters and we all like dread the Monday, dread the week. And it's almost this bad frequency that we put out. And perhaps what is the leadership adaptations that needs to happen in order to change this narrative? It's such an interesting conversation, but we're going to dive into leadership. What is toxic leadership? What does leadership need to look like, in order for us to actually get to a heart-centered place? Without further ado, the amazing Dr. Zondré, warm welcome.
Thanhave Carmen. Nice
Are you
to be
excited?
Here. I'm a bit scared, but but thank you for having me.
Listen, I have to tell you, you had changed my life in so many ways. And I think that is the whole thing about leadership, right? It's about having this ability to touch lives without you even knowing that your life is being touched. It's like great leaders don't just lead with greatness, but they bring out the greatness in others. So I just want to say thank you so much for, being part of my journey. And I'm just You're amazing.
Thanks. Thank you for that.
So I want to go deep into leadership with you today. I think one of the things that we're really starting to see, earlier to my point with regards to toxicity that we're seeing in the workplace, it seems like we're never going to get over it. It seems like it's something that's never going to go away. It is bad for people's health, people's anxiety. What do you feel is how is the system feeding into this? What needs to happen in order to change this narrative of toxicity? Is it legislation? Is it really leadership programs? Or is there something more that needs to happen?
So that's a big question. And we have definitely become used to the dysfunction. It's almost become the norm. So we turn a blind eye and we accommodate that behavior. And when the system is psychologically unsafe, there's really little chance that someone will speak up. And the corporate psychopath works on a 3P pattern. So they're very deliberate about the destruction or the hurt and the harm. So they'll go in and they'll look for pawns. And pawns are people that often give them access to a network or access to other people. And once they've used you, you become a patsy. They almost just disregard you. And if you are someone who's feeling a bit insecure and feeling a bit needy, and you've had a close relationship with a leader and they deliberately disregard you, you become desperate to win their approval. And then they use the pawns to get to the patrons, and the patrons are often the guys in senior positions. And they really speak a language that is convincing to the senior guys. They speak, they speak about vision, and they speak about being human-centric and ethics, and about how, all the right words. And then, they really, I call it the seduction. They really win those guys over. And unbeknownst to those top guys, this dysfunction is happening in the system. And so the top guys are obviously also very embarrassed, when it is found out that this has been happening. And then when the 3Ps, the pawns, the patrons, and the patsies eventually speak to each other, then the system is already, it's already destroyed. And at that point, the abusive leader will just kind of move to another system. Wow. So that's how the cycle continues.
Yeah, and it's almost like being stuck in this drama triangle, right?
Yeah.
It's fascinating listening to that, because I wonder sometimes, is it subconscious behavior or is it conscious behavior?
So in my experience, we all have got the capability to bully.
Yeah.
As a human being. But not all of us progress to almost like this elevated state. And in my experience, and some of the research I've done, there's always a golden thread about malicious intent. So it's intentional. You have a target. You look at the land, the lay of the land. You find someone that's either in your way or bothers you in a way, and you kind of the person would think, I need to get rid of this person. So it's not, I don't even know why I was doing this, or completely ignorant in that way. I do believe there is a target, and people have got an intention to either get someone out or moved or debilitated.
I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day with this young lady that she managed to get a job, but for the past 8 months, they have intentfully worked with her to try and get her out of the business. And, it's so disheartening to see this behavior, because it's happening everywhere. And what the impact is on people, especially in uncertain times with, the state of the economy and so forth. Is there a better way of dealing with these situations?
So, counterintuitively, the good advice is never to take that person on deliberately. Don't threaten them. Don't make them feel even worse than they do feel about themselves. Because if you unpack all of that stuff, inside is someone who is not okay, that is not totally, confident. And that is a way that they mask that personal feeling of insecurity. So that the person's experiencing this kind of behavior from a leader, the best thing that they can do is really work with themselves. And work on themselves.
Yes.
And really have coping mechanisms and understand, how to process this kind of behavior and how to separate the behavior from self and not to internalize it and not to start questioning their own capabilities. That's really the most solid thing that someone can do to survive that. And of course, get out as soon as possible, but that's not always possible.
Yeah.
And I know if people have stayed for years And at the end of that tenure, there's literally nothing left of them. They are, and that's what keeps me up at night. I mean, I have almost developed a little bit of a reputation that people call me. I've heard the manager damager. So if you do good by your people and you're kind and you have dignity in the space and you are respectful, I would do anything to help you. But if you're doing wrong and you're doing bad and you're hurting, I mean, I almost feel like I have an activist stance. I want to address that. I want to deal with it. It's something that really is. It worries me. It worries me deeply. And I just had a session with some students yesterday about the 7 sins of leadership.
Oh yes, I remember.
And I was, always we have a fireside chat, and at the end, we talk about these 7 sins, and I always ask them, guys, how do we mitigate these things? Is it possible to mitigate them? And don't give me things that we've already done, because the things that we're doing are not working. And some people say to me, let's fire them all and start again. I go, that's not practical. I mean, I don't think people give enough thought to those sins and how to mitigate them. And I always ask people, well, what are the consequences if those sins prevail? And the answer is unanimously, we'll lose everything.
Can you take us through those 7 deadly sins?
Yes. So the first one, and they go from worst to terrible. So the first one is the sin of ignorance, or being ignorant. The second sin of leadership is having myopia, or having a myopic view, which is, of course, you can't think of things systemically. The third is reductionism, when you take complexity and you water it down so that probably you feel, competent and secure. And then we have the sin of abdication, where you know something's wrong, you see it's wrong, but you choose just to turn a blind eye. And then followed by abdication is the sin of cowardice. That's the opposite of taking accountability and responsibility. Was that number 5? Number 6 is abuse. Abuse of rank, abuse of power, abuse of the system. And there are many kinds of abuse. And then the 7th sin is the sin of corruption. And corruption doesn't necessarily mean taking money. It is when you kind of dilute the integrity of the place.
Wow.
And so we do this at the end of a leadership day, and scary that people don't know that these 7 sins are actually a thing. But everyone says, well, I can see this one happen. This one, it's like very, very visible or very observable, and it's common day practice. And then we talk about how self-mastery would help with maybe becoming aware of your biasing, and maybe aware of how your thinking patterns, and even in terms of your personality, how you would be susceptible to thinking a certain way, and that could then, without understanding, possibly lead to, like, I'm a feeler, and cowardice would be easy for me because our harmony is so important to me. And relationships, I'd rather keep the relationship and not call it out. So those kind of, deep pockets of knowledge about self are really important.
Yeah.
To kind of analyze or to assess.
And listening to what you're saying there is, all of us can easily tap into the dark side of leadership. Yeah. And I think sometimes it's not a us and them, it's a us. We're all in this. And I love that perspective. And I think this is where the self-awareness, like I always remember the ladder of inference, right? That freaking thing changed my life.
Yeah.
I still remember you had vignettes that you shared with us. What do we think happened next, or who was guilty in some of these vignettes, and how easily we jump to these conclusions. But the thing is, what I'm starting to learn a lot through my leadership journey is when I get triggered and somebody is making me uncomfortable, I need to go, why is that? Because there's something in them that's triggering me, because there's something that I'm matching.
But remember, we're wired to protect our reality.
Yeah.
We're wired to be right. We're wired to be in control. And anything that falls out of our control, we just cut it out. We just disregard it.
Yeah.
Because it makes it easy. Because we want to avoid pain. And we want to be in a state of pleasure. And that pleasure is being in control. We would do anything to be in control.
Yeah.
So it is a baseline reaction to anything unfamiliar or uncomfortable. And when you suffer from a little bit of anxiety or a bit of insecurity, that is even a harder expression. We want to get back to being in control. And I find the meanest experiences with other people are when that other person has been in trouble themselves. They've been scared, or they have not known what to do. and the reaction is cruelty and meanness. So really, good leaders are fundamentally, first of all, whole and confident, because you don't have to be cruel. If you can say, I don't know, but I still know a lot. So I'm confident, and that gives you, then the vehicle to be able to say, well, I don't know, and help me, and be vulnerable as well. So that's kind of robust strength from someone who's confident and has developed the whole person, developed the whole leader, is really quite significant. And yet it's a really calming effect on other people too. If you're with a leader who's like unshakable, not because they're brilliant or they know everything, just that they know what they know, and they're okay with saying, well, I don't know this. There's a sense of strength there.
You and I had a very interesting conversation the other day, and I must say I've been percolating on it. Oh my goodness. It's just one of those nuggets that you drop. You and I are both feelers, and sometimes I will remember people's facial expressions or their body language 10 years later. It's imprinted in my mind, and I can't get rid of it. And I knew exactly at the moment in time when a person was lying to me, saying all the right things, but the body wasn't talking in alignment.
Yeah.
And it bothers me. It bothers me a lot, because I don't know what to do with that information, because it's a part of my sensitivities around that. And then we started talking about gaslighting, and you said it's a form of gaslighting when you're not truly expressing what you're thinking and feeling. And that's almost a form of appeasing and pleasing, and that brings anxiety. Talk to me more about that.
So gaslighting is interesting because it's so subtle, and it happens over a long period of time with subtle little, I call them chips. And the incongruent, so first of all, it's about game playing, and the objective of gaslighting is to make someone doubt themselves. So you say what you mean what you don't say, your body language doesn't match your tone of voice, and that all leaves the other person going, what am I not getting here? Is there something wrong with me? Why can't I understand what is happening here? So it's really about the games that people play. And, bullying in the past used to be, you could see the results, but gaslighting is even more dangerous, because you then would say, like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't even know why I'm at this job. I don't know what I'm doing. And that is the result of this person chipping at you, but they're not telling you that. You declare it yourself. So that's the danger of it. And I've seen many a situation where someone has been gaslighted and they lose their sense of self, and they lose their capability to make decisions and to even be critical in thinking. And they would rather comply, then they become, the manipulation and the destruction has happened. And then they are seeking approval from those very people that kind of destroyed them. And that's quite dangerous as well, because they can't leave the system. They are almost embedded in a very unhealthy way. So
sure,
I've noticed that, I want to say, the new way of breaking someone quickly or properly would be a gaslighting approach, where it's very subtle and it's sarcastic and it's humorous even, and it doesn't always land when someone says, why are you so sensitive again? You kind of laugh, you go, no man, I'm not, and then you take it home, you think about that for a few days and you go, am I too sensitive? So it's always on your mind, and then the next interaction you kind of show up inauthentically and you try and not be as sensitive, and it could really then be the context where you should be sensitive. So it really messes with your sense of reality. And when you aren't in reality, that is really a problem in the business space, if your reality testing is compromised.
How does all of this tie into transactional leadership? So if you have a toxic leader, and you've got a lot of the dark sins of leadership at play, plus you have a person that's merely only focused on the output, which is monetary value. How does this all play its part in a business that is not going to actually drive sustainability?
So first of all, the word toxic is overused, because everything's toxic now, so it's lost its punch.
Love it.
So I like to talk about abusive behavior in leadership, because the behavior is abusive and you can see the behavior, and you can, that's something you can manage. And transactional leadership is not, it's not necessarily toxic or bad in any way. It just has an appetite for the way that transactional leaders really do their thing. And their vehicle of influence is policies, processes, procedures, systems. That's their superpower. They don't have an appetite for relationship. And they look at success in a very capitalistic way, money in the bank. So that style of leadership is less likely to take on a shared value approach or a sustainability lens, because in that generation, that was the order of the day. So we look at a more contemporary approaches, like a more transformational approach. They have got all of it's an evolution, right? So they've got all the brilliant things that transactional leaders had, like the good policies, the structures, the backbone of the organization, but there's an add-on capability of how people respond. So they're very deliberate about the design of the workplace experience, because they figured out that, wow, if people feel good and the workplace experience is significant and positive and dignified, something happens to performance, something happens to loyalty, something happens to retention, something happens to collaboration, something happens to creativity.
Sure.
And so all these elements of positive psychology, like belonging and kindness, those are really clever leadership tools to do more with less. We don't have more time. We don't have more money. We don't have a bigger budget to employ more people. So the people that we have got, we've really got to work smartly. And, I always battle to understand this is not rocket science. We've always known that when people feel bad, they show up, in a lesser positive way. Yet we still are not really using that as powerfully as we could. And that always surprises me.
Yeah, I mean, like the psychological safety aspect of it is always so interesting to me. I had Barry van Sale here a few weeks ago, and we spoke about this whole thing about being in harmony with each other. When you work in collaboration, like that rhythm. There was actually a study that was done with a choir. When they start singing together, their hearts actually starts beating together.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful way of bringing yourself in alignment. When you and your team can actually come from a place of heart. They say the longest journey is the journey from the head to the heart.
Well, leadership is definitely hard work.
It's hard work.
Hard work and hard work.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I heard.
And we've always been, I always also battle with this, emotions are not good at work. Being emotional is not the same as having emotions at work. So purpose, power, excitement, enthusiasm, dedication, ambition are emotions. But the minute we talk about emotion, we associate being emotional and unregulated emotion.
Yeah.
But emotions are indispensable fuel in organizations. I mean, what price do you put on someone who is passionately seeking that sale? I mean, what price do you put on that? And underneath that is the driver of emotion. And I think also, leadership is deeply rooted in the reality of the other person. So you've got to really have someone who wants to lead. It's not about the money, and it's hard work, and you offer an alone, and you often, you have to contain all the pressure. It's really I know this is a cliche, but a purpose-driven thing. You've really got to want to do the leadership, and it's a specific set of capabilities. It's often just treated as guys that are in organizations for a long time, they should eventually end up in leadership roles. So I don't think it's deliberate enough, looking at the makeup, looking at the capability set, looking at the potential areas for development, and of course their appetite.
Yeah.
Our first and foremost question is, how badly do you want to lead? And what is why? Why do you want to do this job? Why is it significant for you? I don't think that question is asked enough.
Simon Sinek says leadership is not about being in charge, but it is taking care of those that you're in charge of, which I absolutely love. And I think that it really lends itself to what you're talking about. I think one of the things that you always remind me of is leadership is a choice. It's up to you whether you want to lead or not, and what that outcome is going to look like. You've been working a lot in building leadership abilities within the people that you work with, and you also educate a lot for corporates and building up their leadership potential. My question to you is, have you ever come across a student where you go, oh my gosh, this is the worst leader I've ever come across in my life, and think that there's no hope, but then at the end,
all the time.
turn around.
I think that fundamentally leadership is about tapping into that ancient wisdom about healing and serving and growing and nurturing. I think that is very much in an African context what our superpower is, relationship currency. And I always talk about, the relationship is the new world currency, because your social capital, your social wealth of your team is quite significant. Tap into your network, your social capital, and access to resources, opportunities, advice, support, ideas, and it's based on the relationship that's in place. So I also always advise leaders, or in my practice or in my teachings, to deliberately ask yourself, how good am I at this relationship thing? And not a relationship for the sake of selling something or getting something from you, but really taking that seriously to build a relationship, because I think that's a powerful competitive advantage that is sometimes overlooked as well.
100%. And I think this is also something I'm learning a lot with conscious leaders, and what we're doing there is the power of unity, and when we come together, and the networking aspect. And what I'm also learning is, like, I don't need to know it all.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so powerful to sometimes, tap into somebody's wisdom and then go, oh my word, you know so much about this topic. Why should, and this is where the podcast is so lovely, is like bringing in people that have different perspectives and knowledge and wisdom on everything out there, because together we can bring interesting, perspectives. Something that,
Yeah, so I was to chip in there. So when you have the social capital, this relationship currency in an organization, something emerges called a culture of helpfulness. So problems are solved so much faster. Ideas are generated so much faster because people know people who know. So I don't have to know anything, but wow, I know someone whose husband knows something.
Oh, wow.
And so you have access to that, which, if you think about from a money perspective, is quite significant.
It's very interesting, that you tap into that. I was talking to one of the leaders a few weeks ago, and we also discussed this when we had our first networking event, about this thing around women are asked to keep their relationship abilities away because it interferes with business and transactions, and to not build relationships. And I feel that is so wrong. And why would they think that's not a good thing?
Yeah, relationship is a new world currency. I think that is grossly neglected or underlooked as a capability.
Yeah, because
there's trust in the system. There's no need to show off anymore when you know someone well. It's really, you just take the energy down. You get real much quicker. You get to the point much quicker. So I think that's something to pursue as a leader.
So I want to talk to you about leadership. You talk about transformational leadership and all of the different components of what that actually entails. So authentic leadership, transactional leadership. I'm just trying to think of all of them. If you can make authentic leadership, if you can maybe talk us through the various components of a transformational leader and what makes them so powerful.
So, there are lots of leadership styles, and everyone who's researching leadership will come up with another naming convention. And so I'm also not keen on the naming conventions. I'm keen on the practitioner part. What do they do that's different? Or how do they do leadership that's different? And there's a big connection between leadership being and leadership doing. And I think that's where the big connection has come with the more transformative approaches, or the more humanistic approaches. Is there's a stronger, more deliberate intention to look at the being. How is my being influencing my doing? And the minute you have that human awareness, and the first awareness of human is self, you translate into the human intelligence or the human awareness of other people. And to me, there are many outstanding things, but the fact that transformation leaders design a workplace experience that is conducive to humans, I think that's quite special. But underneath that are things that have to be in place, like good, solid emotional intelligence. Lots of work on self, lots of questions around what are my values and how do they demonstrate in behavior. And also a lot of questioning around, my purpose and why am I doing this. So a lot of self-work needs to be done. And you're relatable when you've done self-work, because if meeting yourself and looking at yourself is the hardest thing you'll ever do. So there's a realness, and people relate to that.
Yeah. Light as a feather, deep as the ocean, right? Like the moment you start going within, like, oh my gosh, it just goes deep, deep, deep. But one of the things that I also just wanted to ask you, I'm really on this journey of authenticity and understanding what authenticity really is. You know, it's I think there's a big misconception that authenticity is, I'm just going to show up as who I am, and I'm just like with all the ego and all the amazingness that I am. But I don't think that's what authenticity is. I think authenticity is really diving so deep within the core of who you are and really understanding who you are, so that that person can come to life from all the conditioning and grooming that you've experienced over your life and life experience, world models, and really relearning and unlearning aspects of who you are. And the more I'm working with this word authenticity, the more I realize how little I know about authenticity. It's actually such a deep concept. And I think that the wisdom has been lost over centuries, and the wise tales and the human stories behind authenticity and the practices of authenticity. And in a world that is geeking out about artificial intelligence and how quickly we run to things that are fake, and how we love fake.
Want it now.
You want it now. And we are almost setting a scene and creating a place where people don't appreciate authenticity. But now we're getting into a place it's artificial meat and it's artificial this and artificial that. I do believe that people are going to start putting a price on authenticity in its purest form, and that means there's going to be a lot of work on yourself in order to get there. What is your view on that?
Well, I absolutely agree with you that buzzwords kind of minimize the depth of concepts. And you know, people are talking about your authentic self, but it's almost become a colloquial, like a little bit of a pop culture phrase. And you're absolutely right. It is really just deep understanding of, why do I do what I do? Where do those triggers come from? How do I shift them? What are the implications if I don't? It's really, who am I? And why do I do what I do? And there's lots of things that make me me. And layer by layer, like to unpeel those, you know, from a genetic profile point of view, then maybe from a family conditioning, so like a body of knowledge called transactional analysis, and then maybe even an external layer, like an archetypal coding, like how does society influence us? To get to all of that and look at how many different parts of me do I know. And it's not a quick fix, and it never means that you will be authentic all the time. Some days will be better than others, but at least hopefully the EQ part will kick in and say, okay, I've just compromised myself now. I wasn't very authentic. So the self-work is it's not about the end journey. It never ends. And, you know, until the day you die, you're working on it, because at any moment you can fall off the wagon and do something really poorly, or show up very poorly. But at least you know, wow, that wasn't great. Let me try better next time. And I think that's the messaging about, there's no end. There's no end point. And it's never fixed. It's never like, tick, got it. And the more you know, the more you'll find out. And the more you know, the more you'll find out. And hopefully, from a leadership point of view, the more we know about humans, the better we'll do as leaders. And things will change all the time. It's always an evolution. So what people are kind of considering good leadership now might not be that in 10 years' time, because it's really context, and the relevance of the context is important as well, or contextual relevance is important.
You know, I love what you're just saying. Like it's just speaking to my heart in so many ways. Something that comes to mind is, so on my neurodivergent journey, it came as a shock to me. To know how much I've been masking. Like I thought after my unassignments and all of this work that I had to do with my reflective writing, that I kind of like got to the bottom of what's going on with Carmen. But what I then realized is, like, this is an ongoing journey. This journey is like the 40, 50 years, or however I'm alive, I'm going to still be diving in.
That's why things like resilience are so important, because you need to keep going. You know?
Exactly.
And empathy is so important, because you need to also be kind to yourself when you're going through this, you know, and stay out of judgment. So that's really where the EQ stuff plays a big role. And I also learned how hard I need to work on my awareness. One of the things, for example, is with the masking that we do, is the masking is all about
people feel offended by you.
Yeah.
So now you don't want to approve. And then, like, if you speak your truth, people get offended by it. But if you mask, you harm yourself actually more than you're harming those around you. And you don't speak your truth. And it's such a fine balance. And, you know, sometimes it's hard when you're in these social settings, but it's finding that balance.
Absolutely. And how much, I always say, how much you sell your soul. Everyone's got a cut-off point.
Yeah.
Like, I'll do this, but not this.
Yeah. It's a wrap. The question we always need to ask ourselves, it's not how can I be a great leader, but how can I, as a leader, bring greatness out of those I lead? If you want to join the Conscious Leaders movement, go to the following link, linktree/Carmen Murray. There you will find all the resources, activities, as well as the link to our podcast, the link to our YouTube channel, and then also all of the current activities that we are hosting, as well as access to our digital magazine. Thank you.